Greetings, intrepid grammar students. Sister Yagi here. This video is for two purposes, really. Number one is to show you how to manipulate PowerPoint slides as you're diagramming. And number two, to give you just some basic diagramming principles from the get-go. So you kind of know what you're doing, you have a good foundation. And these are going to carry through the entire semester. Our diagrams are obviously going to get more difficult, but these principles are going to stay the same. I also want to let you know that you don't have to diagram in a PowerPoint. If it's easier for you, and it actually is for me, to print out a Word document and just write them out by hand and then scan or take a picture of it, I find that faster than manipulating these lines and making sure everything's lined up and connected and all of that stuff. Whatever you want to do, as long as it's legible and I can clearly see what goes where and how things are connected, you can do whatever you prefer. Okay, so on your slide you're going to have two sentences that are exactly the same, one at the top, one at the bottom, and then in the corner you're going to have some lines to work with. The easiest way I found of doing it is copying and pasting. So I right click on the line I need, I copy it. You can use control keys. So I've got my line. Now you can move these anywhere, you can orient them in any way, you can make them longer, shorter, vertical, whatever. The first thing you want to do with every single diagram is to set up the structure for your subject and verb. And this is every single diagram is going to have this basic structure as its kind of foundation. So you've got a horizontal line with a vertical line intersecting it. And this is for your subject and verb. Now your sentence up above, you can just click and drag things where you need them to go. So I'm looking for subject and verb, and that's a great way to approach any sentence. Those are kind of the anchors, the foundation of your sentence, and then everything else is going to relate to them in some way. So if you can identify those two parts of speech first, fill out that main structure of your diagram. So subject goes on the left, verb goes on the right, and they're separated. And then you can start to attack the rest of the sentence. So I have a subject, and then I immediately think of what type of verb do I have. There are three categories of verbs, as you know from chapter 2. You have be verbs, linking verbs, and action verbs. And the type of verb is going to determine how the sentence is diagrammed. If you have a linking verb or a be verb, it's going to be followed by, generally, sometimes it's followed by nothing, and everything's going to be below, and that's your main line. But linking verbs and be verbs have backslashes after them to separate them from what follows. And what follows is going to be a subjective complement. Now, that is a long term. That means a noun or an adjective that is defining or describing the subject. I think of it as an arrow pointing backwards to the subject. Okay, so what is that word? Machados are what? Oops, clicked on the wrong word. What they are is neighbors. Okay, so the other way of thinking about that is that this is an equal sign, and it's equating the subject with something else. They are neighbors. Okay, so that's my main line, and then I'm going to have modifiers. As I said before, maybe I didn't say before, nouns and verbs are always going to go on horizontal lines, always. Modifiers are going to go on slanted lines. Modifiers can be prepositions, modifiers can be adjectives, adverbs, articles. And what a sentence diagram does is it shows us how everything is functioning and related to each other. So a slanted line is going to hang off of what it's modifying. So we have Machados here, and articles are always modifying nouns, always. So they're always going to go below on a slant, below a noun. Now you can just drag the word here and leave it this way. If you really want to make it fancy, you can move the word around so it lines up like that. I really don't care as long as it's legible and clear. Okay, and then I have helpful. Helpful is describing what? It's describing what type of neighbors they are. So again, I'm going to need a slanted line. It's coming off of neighbors because That's what it's modifying. And I drag helpful, and I could just leave it like that if I wanted. Okay, once you've got all of your words taken care of and you need to diagram every single word, you're done with your diagram, but you're not done with this sentence. The last thing you need to do is identify the sentence pattern, and that's where the cheat sheet is going to come in handy. So what I do is I go to insert and put a text box in here, and above it I'm going to put what sentence pattern it is. This has a subject, a be verb, and then a noun as the subjective complement. So that makes it a pattern 3 sentence. And now I am done with my sentence pattern. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more just to show you some variations and to make sure this process is in your head clearly. I've already oriented the lines because I don't want to waste your time. So again, my basic structure with all of these is the horizontal line with the vertical intersecting it for my subject and verb. So I go up to this sentence, I find what my subject is. It's students. The verb is are. And they are what? They're out of shape is what's going to be my subjective complement. I'm going to get to that in a minute because that's a little bit tricky. Those is modifying students. So it's going to go below there. Now I have out of shape. One of the things I always do as I'm diagramming is I'm looking for prepositions and prepositional phrases. Know that they never go straight on a horizontal line. Okay? A preposition is a little word that is connecting a noun to the rest of the sentence. So a prepositional phrase is everything from the preposition to that noun. And a lot of you are going to be tempted to put the noun on this main horizontal line. It will never happen. And there are not a lot of times in language that you can say there are no exceptions, but this is one of them. So you want to keep an eye out for those prepositions so you know that it's not going to go on the main line. Prepositional phrases are always modifiers. They're either going to be functioning as an adverb or an adjective. So you have to kind of figure out how they're functioning in order to know where to diagram them. Most prepositional phrases, probably 90%, are going to be diagrammed below as a modifier of either the verb or a noun. In a few cases, they're going to be diagrammed on a pedestal, and I want to show you that because that's a little bit tricky. It has to meet 3 criteria in order to be diagrammed on the pedestal and not below the main line. First is it has to be in the predicate, meaning it has to follow the verb, which this one does. Our verb is are, our prepositional phrase is out of shape. Second, it needs to be functioning as an adjective, meaning it's modifying or describing a noun. So, out of shape is describing students. So we've met that rule. Third one, and this is where Vito, the author of the book, and I disagree. She says that you should be able to substitute a one-word adjective for it. Like those students are unhealthy, maybe. My problem is my brain doesn't always come up with a one-word adjective. I'm just not that sharp. So the easier way for me to think about it is it figurative? If it is figurative, then it's going to go up on this pedestal structure. Let me explain what that means. Are the students outside of a location called Shape? Are they in Shape, New Jersey? No. They are, so it's not literal. If it were out of town, then it would be literal. So because it meets those 3, it's in the predicate, it's functioning as an adjective. In other words, it's modifying a noun, and it's figurative. I'm going to put it on a pedestal. So what I do, I'm going to show you that these pedestals are always too tall, so you can shorten that. And then it needs to have a horizontal line. Now the principles that I've talked to you about, the modifiers go on a slant and nouns go on a horizontal, are going to follow for prepositional phrases, whether they're diagrammed above or below. Okay, so Shape is my noun. It's the object of the preposition, and it's diagrammed on a horizontal line. If that were shape, that would be awesome, but it's not. Clicked on the wrong box, sorry. Okay, there's my noun on the horizontal. And then my prepositions, there happen to be 2 of them in this case. Usually there's 1, but in some cases there's 2. Go on the slanted line. And now I'm done with my diagram. But I'm not done with a sentence. Remember, I have to identify sentence patterns. On a test, sentence patterns are 40% of the score. So if you're forgetting sentence patterns, you're automatically losing 40%. So just make sure that you're getting these. So I have students as my subject. I have a be verb. And then I'm just simplifying this and seeing it as an adjective. So subject, be verb, adjective makes it a pattern 2. And now I am done with that sentence. Okay. A couple more. I'm going to move a little bit faster because hopefully we've kind of got the idea here. Again, we've got my basic structure of that horizontal and vertical line. I'm looking for subject and verb. The subject is problem. Now, this brings up the important point. We are not worried about meaning. We don't care about what this means. We're worried about how things function. Your whole relationship to language has been based on what things mean. And there are some words that have more weight, more meaning than others. We focus on people because that's key. It's telling us who we're talking about. But John is not the subject. John has an apostrophe S. It's a possessive. Possessives can never be subjects, and they will never go on the main line. They're always going to be possessing a noun, right? So possessives are always going to go below. Whose problem is it? It's John's, so he's going to go below. Then we have our verb. Because it's a be verb, it's going to be followed by a backslash, and then we have our subjective complement, which is, again, equated to pointing back to the subject. So the problem is important. That's what I'm equating. Last thing I do is insert my sentence pattern. I have subject, be verb, and an adjective makes it a pattern 2. Okay, this last one we're jumping ahead just a little bit to next week's assignment where we're using action verbs. But I want to show you that there's one main principle that's different in action verbs and everything else is the same. So I've got my basic horizontal and vertical line. I'm looking for subject is students. The verb is love. And that's an action verb. Okay, with action verbs, instead of a backslash following to show that there's an equation going on between the first and last parts of that diagram, there's a wall. Now notice that the line separating the subject and verb is long. It goes all the way through, where the line separating the action verb from the direct object is short. It just goes to the line and then stops. So whenever you have an action verb, automatically you're going to put this brick wall here. To figure out what the direct object is, you're going to ask the question what? Students love what? They love diagrams. Yay, we all love diagrams. Okay, I've got my main line. I always work on that main line and then I go back to find things. BYU Idaho now could be a noun, right? I attend BYU Idaho, the institution, the school, the thing. But in this case, it's modifying students. So remember as you're going through here that words and their functions can change depending on the sentence. In this case, BYU Idaho is modifying students. And sentence is also a thing, but in this case, it's telling me what kind of diagrams we're doing. Okay, so, and then you would identify sentence patterns. I hope this helps kind of outline some things. I know this is out there. 99% of you have never done this before. If you're still unsure, if you have questions, muddle through your assignment. You're not graded on how well you're doing. You're grading on completion. And I'm happy to talk to you if you're just still befuddled with this whole thing. The best way of sorting this out is to have an actual conversation. Let's meet virtually. We can talk through this, ask questions, practice, and get you up to speed.